Okay, welcome to Lesson 6.6. Thanks for watching. Please watch this in its entirety. What we're going to be talking about tonight is changing percents into decimals into fractions. Okay, and I think you already know some examples where we can basically move back and forth between these three forms. Think of these as forms of a number. Okay, a real quick one to start out with, and we'll talk about some more in a second. Let's take the fraction 1/2. Okay, I think you all know, if you think about it, if you write 1/2 as a decimal, it's the same as 0.5, and if you write that as a percent, it's 50%. Okay, so here's an example where 1/2, 0.5, and 50% all represent the same amount of something. They all represent half of something, right? So whether you say 50% of something, 0.5 of something, or 1/2 of something, we're talking about the same mathematical quantity. And that's the idea. So let's go ahead and write the three up: percents, decimals, fractions. Okay, let's put an S on the end of fractions. Okay, decimals and percents. Okay, so we've basically got 4 steps here. We got 4 different conversions that you're going to need to be able to do here. So look at these quickly and think if you can, to yourself, can you come up with a rule for any of these? And I'm going to give you a hint. 2 of them are actually very, very simple, and you already know the rule for them. The other 2 can be quite easy, or they can be rather challenging. Okay, so if I gave you your choice, and I'll even give you another hint, the 2 easy ones are going to be over top of each other. So which are the easy ones? Are they A and D, or are they B and C? Okay, and I think if I had somebody here helping me today, unfortunately I don't. There's no guest today. But if I did, I think people would probably pick A and D. And the reason is all we have to do to change percents into decimals or decimals into percents is we just move the decimal point. Okay, so if I have a percent and I want to change it to a decimal, I just move the decimal. I'll put this up here. Put the decimal point 2 places to the right. Okay. Quick example. Okay. Let's pick the example 0.25. I'm sorry. That's not a. Hold on. I'm skipping ahead of myself. Let's take the example of 25%. Okay, 25%, if I change it into a decimal, all I do is I take the decimal, which would be right here after the 5, and I move it 2 places. Oops, that's embarrassing. I meant to the left. All right, so let's fix that. I'm glad I caught that. All right, 2 places to the left. Unfortunately, because I was moving the arrow to the right, I had right stuck in my head. So I'm going to move the decimal 2 places to the left, and I'm going to get 0.25. That's literally all there is to it. And if I go the other direction and I change that decimal 0.25 back into a percent, I just move the decimal 2 places to the right. Okay, and so I'm going to get, again, 25%. Okay, that's all there is to changing decimals and percents back and forth to each other. Okay, nothing new there, and that should not be a surprise. This is actually a review part. All right. Another idea that we've seen before is changing a decimal into a fraction. This is the one where we kind of joked about the frogs. We read it and we reduce it. So let's go ahead and do that. If I read 0.25, you can read it as 0.25, or you can read it as 25 hundredths, and that's the correct way to read it. And that could just as easily be a fraction as a decimal. Now reduce 25 over 100, it reduces down to 1/4. So to change a decimal into a fraction, we read it and we reduce it. Which leaves us with the last step of changing a fraction into a decimal. Now some fractions we're just going to know off the top of our head. Like the first slide where we had a half and we just change it into 0.5. Just like that. Same thing with 1/4. We know that 1/4 is going to be 0.25 as a decimal. And that's how we change it back. But if I don't know that, all I do is divide the top number by the bottom number, put a couple extra decimal points in there. And 4 goes into 10 twice, you get 8. Subtract, you get 2. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers? Bring down the 0, and 4 goes into 20 exactly 5 times. So if you don't know one off the top of your head, or you can't remember it, or it's a harder one, then you just do a long division problem. Okay? Now that may not be your most fun thing to do because we're not big fans of long division, but that's really all there is to it. Okay? So you've got 4 steps here. Changing a percent into a decimal into a fraction into a decimal, and a decimal back into a percent. Okay, A and D should be pretty straightforward. All we're doing is moving decimal points back and forth. The harder one is changing a decimal into a fraction or a fraction into decimal. Probably the hardest one is usually C. Okay, changing fractions into decimals where we actually have to do division. There will be one example though where B is going to be a little tricky, and that's going to be involving using repeating decimals. Okay, we're going to talk just a little bit about it in Course 1, but that's something you're going to have to learn how to do next year in pre-algebra. All right, let's go ahead and let's do a sample problem. So I've made this chart out, and you can see for each line in the chart I've got 5 lines, and I've given you one of the 3 different forms. And what I want to do right now together, we're going to just convert each of these 5 numbers into the other 2 forms. Okay, are you ready? All right, so we'll do them color-coded. So let's start with 0.35. Let's change it into a percent. All I have to do is move the decimal over 2 places to the right, and think about it. You should get 35%. Now to change it into a fraction, read it out loud. You get 35 over 100. That's a fraction, but now we have to reduce it to simplest form. Take a 5 out of the top and bottom, and we'll get 7 over 20. Okay? So that's the idea. Now let's start with a percent. This time we have 8%. Just to change it into a decimal, we're going to move the decimal over 2 places to the left, and we're going to get 0.08, which is the same thing as 8 over 100. And that's going to reduce to, take out 4 out of the top and bottom, and you get 2 over 25. Okay? So those are the missing forms there. Now 3/8 is a little harder. 3/8, if you remember the trick I taught you, 1/8 is 0.125. If you triple that, you get 0.375. If you don't remember that, no big deal. You're just going to take 3 and you're going to divide it by 8. Now we don't have enough room to do that right here, but trust me, if you do that long division, you're going to get 0.375. Okay, so that turns it into a decimal, and now to change it into a percent, again, move the decimal over always 2 places, and you get 37.5%. We'll cross the 7 to make it look a little better. Now the next one is, I told you we'd talk a little bit about repeating decimals. 0.3 repeating is one that you should be familiar with. You get that a lot on a calculator. You get it when you divide 1 by 3. So this is just the repeating decimal you get from 1/3. So there's the fraction, and that's one of those ones you should probably just know. Again, like I said, the harder repeating decimals, we're going to learn a trick or a couple tricks and methods next year in pre-algebra on how to change repeating decimals into fractions. But one like this, you're kind of expected to just know. And by the way, this is going to be 0.33333. It goes on forever. Okay, so if I move the decimal over to, this is actually 33.3. Again, it's repeating because it's going to keep going, percent. And all I did was move the decimal 2 places, just like I did in the previous one. The last one is 2/5. Again, if you know this one, automatically it's 0.4 or 0.40 if you want to put the extra 0 in. If you don't know it, then you just divide 2 by 5. The biggest mistake people make is they don't remember bow tie. The bottom always goes outside in front, and the top always goes inside when you change it into a division problem. Okay, so remember, it's always the top number that goes inside here that gets divided. Okay, don't forget that. Anyway, once you get 0.40 as a decimal, move the decimal over 2 to the right, and you're going to get 40% as a percentage. Okay, so there it is. So let's go ahead and practice these on your own. So make sure that you've got this. So to change a decimal into a percent, move the decimal 2 to the right. To change a percent to a decimal, move the decimal 2 to the left. To change a decimal into a fraction, read it, reduce it. And to change a fraction into a decimal, if it's one you know off the top of your head, that's great. If not, then you just do a long division problem. All right, so let's see if you can do these on your own. So I'm just going to give you 1%, 1 decimal, and 1 fraction, and I want you to find the other 2 forms. I don't care which order you do it in. There's a logical order to do both A and C in, but I'm not going to let you know what that is. So go ahead, and I want you to just find the 2 missing ones. So the first one, you have the percent. So make sure you find the decimal and the fraction. The second one, you have the decimal, so find the fraction and the percent. And finally, for the last one, the fraction, find both the percent and the decimal. All right? All right, go ahead and pause the video and fill in, let's count this as 6 questions because it's really 6 different problems. Okay, and when you're done filling all 6 in or you get stuck, go ahead and resume the recording and we'll do these together. Okay, let's start with 2%. Let's change it to a decimal. As a decimal, it's 0.02. And the order that I was referring to on A and C is it's always easy to go, if you're going from a fraction to a or to a percentage to a fraction, those are kind of 2 extremes. It's always easier to convert to a decimal in between. So 2% is 0.02. Again, read it, reduce it, that's 2 hundredths. which is 1 over 50. And you can go ahead and write that whole workout, write 2 over 100 equals 150. Just circle the reduced one. 0.52, again, let's do the percent first because it's pretty easy. That's 52%. And as a fraction, it's 52 over 100, which is 26 over 50, which is 13 over 25. And I can't go any farther than that, so that's reduced. And finally, the last one. Okay, 6 over 25, I'm actually going to cheat a little bit on this one. I'm going to go against what I just said. I'm going to change the bottom into something over 100 by just multiplying by 4. Okay, and that's partly because I just don't have enough room here to do the long division. If I multiply the top by 4, I'm going to get 24 over 100, and that reduces to 0.24. Now, I could have reduced it back to 625. That wouldn't make any sense. But I get 0.24 as a decimal. Okay? And actually, I take back what I just said. I didn't really actually go out of order. I did find the decimal. I just did it using a fraction method instead of by long division. And then finally, the last step on this last one is very simple. Move the decimal 2 to the right, and you get 24%. Okay? So that's what you should have got for those 6 problems. That's it, guys. So this is your handy-dandy gnome signing off, saying see you tomorrow. And thanks for watching. All right. Bye.